Welcome to the Greater Culture Podcast, where we have conversations about how to elevate the quality of life through movement, nutrition, recovery, and mindset practices.
Well, welcome to the Greater Culture Podcast. Really excited today to be joined by Tia Wright. She is somebody who has been in the health and fitness space for over a decade now as an athlete, as a coach, as an owner now of Culture Fitness and Culture Health. So really excited to dive into some topics around how do we help people improve the quality of their life. So Tia, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. You know, favorite topics right here. Favorite topics.
Yeah. And so I think to give our listeners an idea of what it's been like for you to get to this stage of owning your own space and really helping people when it comes to movement and nutrition and recovery and mindset, give us a little bird's eye view of how did you end up here owning your own space and helping people improve the quality of their life?
Yeah. Well, I started CrossFit specifically in 2010, right after I had graduated high school. And I knew the day I started CrossFit that I was going to own a gym. So that was in 2010. It is currently 2023. It has been 13 years of collecting information, as I would call it. And so I knew when I wanted to own the gym that I was, either going to be presented with an opportunity to open the gym or I was going to have another opportunity like a coaching position. So for the last 13 years, I've been working for other gyms, and it was honestly just like one cool opportunity after the next for me. And, I got to be, head coaches and I got to be part-time coaches. I also got to run operations and systemize gym. I got to flip a few gyms. I got to run nutrition programs for gyms. So there were really I also trained coaches. So there were really diverse experiences within all of that. And in between all those jobs, I tried opening gyms. And it never happened. And we can talk about why that was as well. But just recently I made a move. I had moved for the last 8 years. And I recently made a move to Arkansas in the United States, middle of nowhere, really. No one really knows what is in Arkansas. And I just fell in love with this little town called Bentonville. And my boyfriend had moved here as well. But I really made this move for myself. That was important that I made that move for myself. And I went through some personal stuff, which I am absolutely willing to share, that helped me break through the path to get me opening the gym. So there really was a massive mental shift in order for me to pull the trigger on starting the gym. And, the vision and the passion behind it has always been how transformative fitness and nutrition can be for the mindset. And when you take those mental tools and you apply them to everywhere else in your life, we just increase that quality of life. So we can kind of dive into what those all are and what they mean, but that is 100% what I am doing, and it is great.
I think the path that you've taken to get to this point, as well as all the things that you're interested in, very much jive with the things that I get passionate about, which is why I'm really excited to dive into the topics. And so you mentioned that, over a decade ago, you were very interested in fitness, interested in coaching. I'm curious what got you interested in coaching, or what got you interested in helping other people through the means of movement and coaching them and working with them in a group setting. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think like all things, if you are going to influence people, you have to go through some sort of transformative story yourself. So when I started CrossFit and I recognized how much it improved my well-being, and I saw other people struggling with those same things, and I figured out solutions, you immediately kind of think, maybe I should share these solutions with people. I loved the idea that when I walked into a gym, I could barely do a push-up. And then all of a sudden, years later, I was doing handstand push-ups. And that was just like anything else, right? Like someone walked into the gym and they were like, I can't even do a push-up. But I was watching their mindset be completely different from mine. So I said, well, what if they had the mindset I had? And would they feel like there's more hope there, or would they excel faster? Right? Who knows? And so I think for me, it was identifying that something worked well for me in the progression of becoming healthier and changing my mindset and figuring out what the health is. And because I saw a massive amount of success there, I should probably share this with people. And when I started sharing that with people, there was a lot of really great feedback. And, that just continues as you start to grow and work with people. So sure enough, I fell in love with it. And I love coaching and I love helping people. I could have tried influencing people and absolutely hated it. Who knows? But I fell in love with it. And that's how it started. And that was just in coaching, just in fitness. After that, I worked at like 3 or 4 gyms at a time. Like I was just part-time coaching. And then I got a full-time position at Industrious in Seattle. And that was just a whole life-changing experience for me. I absolutely loved that job. But one of the things that really sent it for me with them was mindset, was the environment and the consistency and the support that community brought me. And then through that, I was also really competitive. And additionally, I had a mindset coach at the time. So there were a lot of things that started building where I'm at now, with the health coaching that I do on the side of the gym. And then soon enough, the life coaching that goes along with that. So it has been an influence thing. Like I have definitely worked with people, but I have built that and it has morphed over the years.
I can hear the excitement and the care that you take for helping other people to unlock or even discover some of the same realizations that you had along the way of ways we can move better, feel better, have a little bit happier or more fulfilled sense of life, which really exudes with some of the coaching you did. And what I'm interested in is I think all of us find our way to fitness usually through movement of like, hey, let's walk into a gym or a buddy pulls me in or this or that. And it starts with the movement piece. And it sounds like in your experience over the years, you realize there's so much more to it than simply moving for 60 minutes in a day. So talk to us a little bit about what that journey was like of, hey, movement maybe started it, or maybe you wanted to look a certain way or achieve a certain goal. And then along the way, you're like, there's so much more to unpack and help people with when it comes to mindset or recovery or nutrition. So how did you go about learning and experiencing all of those factors of health and wellness?
Man, this is like a 4-hour podcast. Okay. We can totally do a series 2 if this gets hot. So, okay. Well, I'll say everyone's journey is going to be really different. We're going to have really similar things though. So I will share this one because I think it shares the most commonalities, but this is one of a million examples I could share. So my whole life, I wanted to have abs. I'm not even kidding you. Like my sister just naturally lean in the torso. She had abs. We were athletic, but we didn't do abs. My best friend, very lean stature, naturally had abs. This other gal, she was amazing. She was a great athlete, also a great student, abs. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, how come all these amazing women in my life are just lean in the torso and I am not? Like, why do I gain all my weight? It was just so frustrating. And that these girls were, I'm like, I'm eating what they're eating. I'm doing the exercise plans that they're doing because we all played the same sport. Like, what is different? Like, why can't I not figure this out? So when I started CrossFit, I started seeing a little bit of difference. Like, I was like, oh my God, there's hope, you guys. Like, I'm going to have abs one day. And like, don't get me wrong. I had a really athletic stature. Like, I know I looked fit, but I was fluffy around the midline and I was really insecure about it. And it really isn't about how other people view us. It is 100% about how we view ourselves. And in this case, I was just like, I don't like my torso. And it was hard for me to like brace that. So when I joined CrossFit, I was like, there's hope. And then I went through this phase where it was like, I would eat really well, maybe see an ab, and then I'd have a hamburger and all the abs were gone, right? Like, all right, all hope is ruined. Like, that's it. I'm just never going to have them. So I went through this phase where I started just accepting that I might just be a fluffier female. And that doesn't mean that I can't be really fit. that doesn't mean that I can't do these like extraordinary things and prove my fitness to myself or anyone else, or like maybe even qualify for the CrossFit Games. All it meant was I just had a different body type, and maybe I just needed to start accepting that. So a lot of things happened between this time period and when I started seeing something that changed. Something changed for me. I graduated college, which school was an extreme burden for me. I got an amazing full-time job that made me really happy, and I had a massive sense of belonging in life. Also was financially secure for the first time ever. I had purchased my own first house, and having that like grounding and security was massive for me. My sister got married, and I was super stoked for her, but I also like came out of the shadow of being the little sister for once in my life. There were just incredible things that happened. I had a consistent schedule. Like all of these things fell into place, and training took off. And guess what happened? I had abs. It was incredible, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. Like, look how much my body has transformed and all of these aspects that have come together, right? Oh, I also healed my gut during that time. And it was incredible. And I think everyone would think, I want that story too. Like, I want that. Maybe I'm like Tia, right? Like, maybe that's like the thing. I just need to do what Tia did. Well, guess what, guys? Those abs were the most underwhelming thing I have ever achieved in my entire life. They were so underwhelming. I just remember thinking, I had them, and I remember thinking, who the heck cares? Who the heck cares? It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't make me money. I mean, in some worlds, it probably could make me money, but I didn't want to make money off of my abs. It didn't make me money. It didn't get me men. Like it kind of did, but it didn't prove value in that way. Like it didn't help me with my job. It didn't necessarily make me fitter. I knew plenty of fit people who didn't have abs, right? So I was just like, how crazy that we just spent all this time, me and myself, that I spent this whole time in my life obsessing about this. And I got to this point where I was like, wow, that's so underwhelming. But what I learned along the process was that I was a lot more than my body, that health and fitness was a lot more than a physical body, and that when we obsess about something so physical like that, it can be really dangerous. And what I did focus on in the process was performance, mindset, being my best self, showing up every day for me, all of those kinds of things. So that is one story of how, mindset and physical fitness and nutrition and all of these other areas of life kind of come together and culminate as quality of life.
Yeah, one of the things that really stands out to me about that story is that we can set the goal, we can set the objective. I want to run a 5K or 10K or a marathon. I want to do an obstacle course race. I want to look a certain way. And maybe that is something aesthetic, maybe it's performance related. And establishing the goal is great. But what you come to find out is all of the behaviors, all the characteristics, all the traits it's going to take to get you there is what's really, really important. And we don't necessarily think about that. We don't realize that the journey tends to be the outcome. Because if we run the 5K, we do the obstacle course race, we finish it and we're like, okay, now what? And that's it. And you realize, hey, this is a lifestyle. We're trying to incorporate practices that can be meaningful for the long haul. And exactly what you spoke about there is that something you learned along the way is, hey, I have this aesthetic goal and I got there, but oh my goodness, look at all this great knowledge, experience, and learning that took place, which is really what is powerful. And so I'm kind of curious then when it comes to your idea of quality of life, how that's maybe changed or shifted. Because I think what we've all come to find out is we might have a goal. And when certain points of our life are like, I want to be really competitive. And then I just want to play with my kids, or I want to be able to hike and climb and do whatever I need to do. So talk to us a little bit about how do you conceptualize or think about this idea of quality of life and making sure people are being happier, more fulfilled in their day to day?
Well, I think having appropriate goals, and I don't mean like, I want to, walk on the moon. Like, I don't mean stuff like that, or I want to accomplish a certain task. I've really shifted these really massive goals, like actual experiences, to what am I going to learn and who am I going to become along the process. And so when I hear people say things like, I really want to lose 50 pounds, I'm all for it. Like, I want to help you because I know that will improve your quality of life. But what I know will improve it even more is helping them through what it is that's preventing them from losing that weight. Because likely is, like, everywhere in the universe is telling us to lose weight right now. Likely is they've tried this before. And that's why, like, when someone comes to you and says, I want to lose this weight, or I want to, accomplish X goal in health and fitness, there is definitely a time that they have tried this. And the things that prevented them from making that happen are the things that will apply to other areas in their life. So, are they a procrastinator? Are they all in, all out, right? Are they like a jump ship kind of person? Are they a self-sabotager? Are they, are they an overthinker? Are they anxious? Like, what are these things that are preventing them from getting that quality of life? And when we break through those things, identity, beliefs, and we create goals based off of behavior, then we start improving quality of life. So I think people think, oh, if I could just be 50 pounds lighter. Oh, if I could just keep up with my kids. Oh, if I could just clean and jerk 225. Like, yes, you may enjoy life more if you have those things because you can add them to your performance. Like, I did this, I did this, I did this. But is it really proving to you that you lived life better?
Yeah, one of the things that you said there that really stands out to me is really ties to this idea of people might say what they want to achieve, and what that really means is they're more interested in the feeling that they will experience if they're able to accomplish that. I want to feel like somebody who can clean and jerk 225. I want to feel like somebody who can run around and play with my kids and keep up with them. And that's essentially what they're chasing. And what we have to do is sort of do that little mental shift for them of like, yeah, that's great. We want to get you there. We want to get you that feeling. There's going to be some behaviors and some actions and things we're going to have to do to allow you to be able to do that. And it sounds like for you, and you said, you had a mindset coach, and mindset's something you're really passionate about. I would love to dive into that because that's a big passion of mine as well. So when you think about this idea of mindset and how it helps people with their quality of life, what have you come to know or understand when it comes to helping people with how they think, how they talk to themselves, the mindset they take towards quality of life, health, fitness, etc.?
Wow. What a broad topic. Okay, so
you take it where you want to go, and I'm willing to dive down the rabbit hole.
Totally. I'll just start from my own personal experience, but I was just like not a very confident person. Like, I think everyone would think, oh, she's super confident. And like, there was a part of me that was confident, but there was this like massive part of me that wasn't. And when I started working with my coach, that was the first thing that changed. He gave me some tools. Like, there was this one time that I missed a phone call from him, and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry I missed your phone call because I knew it was important. And he said, don't ever apologize ever again for that. And he was like, I am here for you. We are on your schedule, and you will learn as much as you need. And your schedule is very important, and we are here for you. So don't apologize for missing something that I called you for, or whatever that was. And you wouldn't think that has to do with confidence, but it had everything to do with confidence for me. It flipped a massive switch. It was like, I am living my life. I am 100% in control of this. And the things that I want, I am massively going after. And I can make time for other people, but I don't need to apologize for living my life. Like, apologizing for everything was just a way that I was reflecting my insecurities, or a way of just not reflecting my confidence. It's really interesting. So then after that, it all just started to like unfold. So he used this drill tool. I don't know what you want to call it, but I use it now. I say delete, delete, delete. And he used cancel, 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 where if I had anything that just wasn't serving me, I would just delete it. So if I ever thought like, oh, I'm really tired and I don't know if I'm going to be able to like get through training today, and I don't have the energy because work is going to be so hard. Like I just delete that because I knew that I had the energy, and I knew that like I would show up for myself in training, and I knew I would listen to my body, and I knew that I had the time and the energy. So whenever those stories, or we call them like gremlins, whenever they just started taking over, I would just delete them. And it was so powerful, and it did worlds on my confidence. So that was the beginning of the process for me. And then after that, we moved into some real like subconscious reprogramming, where we had identified massive limiting beliefs and areas that I just wasn't viewing the world as a successful person. And we broke through a lot of it. So we did a 8-hour breakthrough on family, and we did a 10-hour breakthrough on career. And they were all on reevaluating values, and then, subconscious reprogramming. So going back in your timeline, figuring out how and when you decided you were going to view the world or the situation in a certain way, figuring out how that then makes you see the rest of your life in those situations a certain way. And then going back and reframing that moment so that when you move forward, you view things differently. So a really great example of that is like when people get really, their insecurities get triggered by external comments, right? That could be a time in their life where they decided that when people talk to them in a certain way, they get insecure. So you go back into that time that they first experienced that, you reframe it. There's a whole method behind this. And then you kind of help them bulldoze the way that they viewed it before, and then reframe it and have them view it differently for the future. And all that does is it changes behavior. The next time someone makes a mean comment about them that they don't like, that would once have triggered insecurities, it no longer triggers them at all. It's massive behavior change, and it's extremely powerful. So I went from learning these things for myself and kind of navigating what a tough and like great and secure mindset might look like, to completely wanting to do this for other people and helping people create habit and behavior change with completely transforming their view and their model of the world.
Yeah, the thing that you said there that really stands out to me was unpacking some of the beliefs, because when we have those really deeply ingrained beliefs, it's going to be very, very challenging to adjust any behaviors, any habits, the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about other people. The term that I typically use for that, I've come to know, is this idea of psychological framework of just what are my beliefs and what are my values? How do I see myself in the world? How do I see the world interacting with me? And it's interesting is that it's almost like two different options of like, one is like the world's working for me, or I can operate within that and I can do what I want to do and I can achieve things, or the world's working against me. And if we put ourselves in those two camps, you can start to unpack like how challenging that is to want to move forward in something. But if you feel like the world's against you and everything's challenging, good luck trying to navigate that. And this idea of like working with those beliefs, you had the opportunity to do that yourself. Now you get a chance to do it with other people. What does that process look like? Or how do you start that conversation? Because I think people walk in the door saying, like you said, I want to lose weight, I want to feel better. And in the back of your head, you're like, I know there's probably some beliefs we're about to dive into here I want to help you with. So how do you navigate that when you're working with people?
Yeah, I will say I want to give a quick example, and then I'll answer that question. But this is a very simple example of this. People think like, oh, I don't have any limiting beliefs, like I'm not having any problems, and it's like, okay, that's so sweet, but everybody does. This sounds crazy, but I had very early on identified that I didn't feel I was as pretty as all the games athletes, that my acne held me back from being that pretty, that I didn't look like them. I wasn't lean like them. And then there were some like hard work things that I had identified in myself that I thought that the games athletes didn't have, right? Like I had just created this model of who I needed to become and all of these reasons that I was not like them. So I was holding myself back because I didn't think I was pretty, because I had acne and I didn't see any of the other games athletes having acne, which is it's hilarious, right? But it's real. And I had identified that maybe I didn't have the work ethic or the honesty or whatever that looks like to become one of them. So I had to do some breakthroughs in that area. Like, those sound so little, but they were limiting me in a massive way. So when I had those abs, it was like, maybe I do deserve to stand on that podium with them. And that was the first year that I did well competitively. Interesting cause and effect there, right? So limiting beliefs really they can be very simple and they can be silly. You can almost be embarrassed by them, or they can be extremely raw. And your belief could be, I just don't believe that, it's safe to bring a human into this kind of world or environment. That could be a limiting belief if it's something you want in life, right? It could be that deep. So I just wanted to open with that, because this really is a wide range of what a limiting belief really could be, right? So with clients, identifying beliefs is a very delicate process. It is absolutely, the first step is building rapport. So just making sure that they respect you and that you're always there for them, and that they're going to show up and do their best, and you're going to do your best. And in the gym scenario, that is the first thing you could do for anybody, is build relationship and rapport. And then if they continually see patterns, so maybe the pattern is they show up to the gym for 2 weeks, they're super fired up, and then the third week they just fall off. And then in the fourth week, they identify that they fell off. And then the fifth week, they come back and start those 2 weeks over again. Now we're on a 4-week pattern of someone showing up and not showing up, right? That pattern is going to identify for you that there's a limiting belief involved. So that's kind of how you go about it. Now, am I going to go walk up to them and be like, hey, I've noticed? No, I'm not. But if they come up to me and say, hey, I'm really frustrated, I'm stuck in this pattern and I can't get over it and I don't know what's going on, then I can say, well, I've noticed, and in my experience, here's what it might be. And if they want to push past that, then they can sign up for coaching with me, and they can kind of dive into why that is. But it's also important to remember that everybody's reason for a certain pattern is going to be completely different. This person's lack of consistency in the gym is going to show up as a different belief as anyone else's. So everyone's map and model of the world is extremely individual. So that's where it is actually kind of fun as a coach, because no person is the same as another person, and you're constantly working with a different map, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I really like that metaphor of maps and how we see the world. One metaphor that I think is helpful too is this idea of almost like an iceberg, where it's like what you see on the surface is the behaviors or the actions or what they're doing. And there's this whole world underneath that they may not even have access to or realize the impact that it's having on them. So as a coach, you have that opportunity of noticing the behavior, like you said, and being curious. Hey, are you interested to find out a little bit more? Would you want to dive into this? Are you willing to, do the work that might be necessary to figure these things out, so those surface level actions and behaviors are more in alignment with maybe what you'd like to see happen? So it sounds like that is what you get to do. And I can sense the joy and the excitement you get when you start to help people unlock some of those boxes or walk through a new door that maybe they didn't realize what they had access to.
Yeah. I mean, it's completely freeing. I use the word freedom all the time, but that's because that's my map of the world. All of the transformations that I've had personally have been so freeing. I just felt trapped by, how I saw the world, and I felt trapped by some of the problems that I was having because I didn't know how to fix them. Right. I remember it. I remember just feeling stuck, hopeless. I just depressed. It was just horrible. And those patterns were there. They sure were. And after going through all of that and completely changing my view of the world, all of that is gone now. Everything I just said, all of that negativity is not in my world. And now seeing what it feels like to live life without all of that stuff, it is so freeing. And I want that for people. I want them to feel free. I want them to just limitlessly be able to go chase after what they want. And also, in the process to develop the tools to be able to confront the issues when they come up so that they don't become these massive, patterns, that we develop the tools to be able to break through things as they're here and as they come to us presently, so that we don't just like accumulate these problems over again. So
that's the collaborative process of working with the coaches. You're going and seeking them out because there's something that you just haven't quite cracked the code on or been able to figure out by yourself or through YouTube videos or podcasts. So you start this journey and there's some education, there's some back and forth, and then eventually you want to empower them and give them the tools of, hey, you can do this without me. You don't need me here. I'm here if you need me, but you're going to be just fine if you keep moving forward without me. And along those lines, I love this idea that you've highlighted, and I think the same way around these habits or these behaviors, these practices that we're able to do in our day-to-day allow us to maybe have some of that freedom that you spoke about. So are there certain practices or daily habits or things that you've incorporated into your life that really help you to have that mental model of feeling free and feeling fulfilled with the daily work that you get a chance to do?
Yeah, I still very much so use that delete. And it doesn't necessarily look the way it used to. I think really early on, like every time I had a negative thought, I was using it like probably 100 times a day, just delete. I don't want it. Delete. Now I use it more when I start to identify like anxious things or, which I'm in a personal journey right now with that. And I also use it a lot when other people speak things into your life. And I just kind of I'm like, I don't want that. You just switch that right away. And I say delete. So that is an active practice for me. So if someone says like, oh, I really hope those deadlifts don't hurt your back, I'm like, whew, delete that. Like, I don't want that. You don't put that in my life, or other gym owners, when I was opening the gym, would say things like, oh, gym owning's really hard. Like, I hope the best for you. I'm like, oof, don't want that energy. Like, yeah, it could be difficult, but I am going to make it as easy as possible for myself. Right. Like, thank you for your energy. So yeah, I use delete a lot. It's morphed a little bit. And then I also adopted, like the daily intention. This one is something that I don't know if I'll ever live without it. I love it so much. Every single morning when I wake up, I don't get out of bed until I have like elevated my spirit. So I started this intention with, I wake up, I'll glance at my day and figure out, what is happening during the day, like non-emotionally, just like, gotta go to the gym, gotta work out, gotta go to the store, gotta cook dinner for boyfriend, gotta, do these things, right? Gotta do all these tasks. And I would decide how I wanted them to go based on how I was feeling. So if I'm feeling like I need more of a relaxed day, I would be like, I'm going to be relaxed while I do all those things. Or if I'm like going to get after it, I'd be like, I'm going to be ambitious today. Or if I was just, like feeling really stressed, maybe I would, put in an intention of calmness, or like I know everything's going to be okay type intention. So I started there. Building intention was one word, positive energy that I wanted to bring into my whole day. And then it morphed into just making sure that I uplifted myself and I was in an elevated state before I got out of bed. And now that's pretty much what I do. So it kind of changed, but that would be the second mindset thing that I will never give up.
Yeah, it's amazing how bringing intention helps to not only discover, but realize how much there is of that specific intention throughout the day. Our brains really are wired in such a way that they get distracted super easily. They're pulled in a million different directions on a moment-to-moment basis. But they appreciate targets, and they appreciate having a sense of like, hey, here's what our goal is, or here's what we're striving for today. So by you creating that intention, it's essentially setting your brain on the path of, hey, today, let's see how many times we can find this. And if we can't find it, then let's create it. And let's figure out, how do we get more of it in our life. So by setting that intention, it just helps to direct your brain to like, hey, here's where I want you to put your focus today, because it's gonna be really helpful for all the things on my to-do list or how I'm feeling and how I'm experiencing the world. And then when you notice those things that maybe aren't as helpful, delete, delete, delete. A really effective cue and tool to just help bring a little bit more clarity to your day. You have intentions. You've got this idea of delete that you've found to be really, really helpful. I know you've already helped talk us through how you coach others in the form of behavior change through beliefs and mindset. The name of your gym, Culture Fitness, probably has a similar reasoning behind that of the way that we've formed our brand with Greater Culture. So I'd love to know a little bit about how you think of how culture and community impacts people's behaviors and mindset and how they view themselves and how they're able to move forward as a collective.
I love it. I know it probably is really similar. Okay. So the inspiration came from an environment that I didn't know I needed, but I became a part of that environment. And you become the culture, or you don't fit in and you probably end up leaving. And I needed everything that culture at the time had brought me, which was structure and high consistent energy. There were no lulls in the energy in that gym. Like I needed it, you know, I needed to show up and be amped up every day. And the attitudes, like they were so consistent, right? Yes, it was professional. Like, of course they, you know, because it was like the gym environment and it was professional for them, like they host it, right? But at the same time for me, like I needed that consistency, and eventually I just cultivated that myself. But I was so high and low and so inconsistent, so unpredictable, so out of control of my own energy. And I needed structure because I couldn't create it for myself at the time. Like you can see and feel all of those problems, right? Like just big. And this gym just did that for me. And they also gave me a sense of belonging. Like I didn't know if I belonged anywhere. And like all of those things fit for me. And because I knew I needed them, but like more unconsciously, and then just became part of that culture, it completely transformed who I was and helped me step into who I've always wanted to be. And so for me, like I knew I loved fitness. That wasn't a problem for me, like just showing up and doing that. But what took my fitness to a whole nother level was everything that was beyond it. And that's why I named the gym Culture Fitness, because this is going to be a space where if you come, you will either become like us, which is going to be, I'll explain that in a second, but you are either going to become like us, or, you know, you're not going to fit in here, and that's great. You just leave, right? So if you're struggling with showing up every day, well, the culture we have here is you're going to love it here and you're going to want to come, right? And if you struggle with being afraid of, you know, the insecurities, so you don't like being around other people and you don't like working out in front of other people because you don't like the way you look or you don't like how other people view you. Like, I get it. I completely understand. But the culture here is not like that. At our gym, like we accept everybody. We have all different kinds of body types and we accept everyone for it. And we love everyone for it. And we also understand that journeys are more similar than people think. A weight loss journey is very similar to a competitive journey. And that journey itself is what we're looking at, not the actual results of the journey, right? That's the culture that we're cultivating there. So those are just two examples of like why culture is so important in a gym. And then I would say that the next layer to that is I have worked at so many gyms around the world, let me say, in multiple states across the United States. And the number one thing that I have noticed is gym community and culture always reflects the owner's subconscious behaviors and personality. Super interesting. So I knew a gym owner that was just like really loosey-goosey, just everything goes. And sure enough, the culture was like that too. Like nobody cared about anything. There was just weights flying everywhere and no clips on the bars. And everything was great. There was no structure to classes, and he was like that in his subconscious behaviors, and so were the members. Like, it was just the craziest thing, right? I went to a gym where these two gym owners were the hardest working individuals I have ever met. And everybody in that gym worked so hard. It was really interesting. They would show up and they would just work hard, and they wanted to learn and grow. Super cool. I also went to a gym where the gym owner was super awkward. Like, you first meet them and you're like, I don't know if I should shake your hand. I don't know if I should say hello. Should I introduce myself to people? Should I just like stay quiet? And like, it was just weird, right? Well, the gym owner was exactly like that. Like, just weird. So I knew unconsciously and in my unconscious behavior that if I was really intentional about that unconscious behavior and like looking at some of my own blind spots, that what I was bringing to the table here was going to be huge. And so I had heard things about me as a coach and people saying like, you bring amazing energy, you know, you inspire people, you've got all of this stuff, right? And I knew if I could just bring that to the table, that would be the culture that I wanted to cultivate for people. And so that is like why it is the name that it is. It's because of how important and vital that is.
Yeah. And I think that's something that people are searching for on just another level. And I think it probably got even exacerbated over the last few years when it felt like it was stripped away at different points in time of like, hey, I wasn't able to find that community or that in-person get together where people are encouraging and supportive and pushing you, and you're just one of the crew. And it's funny that you mentioned, you know, the cultures are so unique and so different. And I think one of those sayings that always comes to mind is culture is something either you create or you tolerate, you know? So it's one of those two options. And as an owner now of the business, like, you're setting the tone, and you gave us some really good examples of what the culture looks like and how you're trying to cultivate it. I'm curious, do you have like a core set of values or beliefs or things like that that have shaped the identity or the mission of Culture Fitness and what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I even have them all written down in a list that all of the coaches, I ask all of the coaches to download these belief systems. I'm only going to be able to like rattle off a few, but one of them is the belief that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. So if you're a coach and you have clients in front of you and you believe that they're not doing the best they can, then like, we're going to have some problems. Right? Everyone's trying. It also, that belief system gives you an understanding of grace and forgiveness, right? You look at someone and you say, you're doing the best you can with what you have. That's like, I recognize the effort that you are doing. It's okay that it's not producing the results that I would want you to see or that you want to see, but I know with what you have, you are trying your absolute best. So that's an important one because you're seeing people for where they're at and who they are. But that's like one of the best examples that I have of like how, you know, your belief systems can affect the people that you're training.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing how the owner can establish the vision, establish the core values, establish the beliefs, and then the actual execution. That's the tough part because it comes through in how the coaches show up before class or how they interact with members during class or the way that you communicate with people. And all of it designed, like you said, just create the atmosphere that people get excited. They want to be there. They want to push themselves. They want to try hard, but they also understand like there's some encouragement there. We're humans. We're going to fall down. People are there to pick them up. And it sounds like, at least in the infancy stage of Culture Fitness, that is what gets you really fired up and excited to show up and coach each day there.
Yeah, it does. You know, in my head during this 13-year building period for the gym, I always thought these are going to be like the pillars, right? This mindset stuff is like the pillars because that's what you create in your head. That's like what you're thinking about. And I think about this stuff literally all day long, every day. And I am now in the midst of it and I am realizing like, oh, I've been saying this all along too. It's all very unconscious. So the culture that I am developing right now, like I'm not doing that consciously. Like I am showing up, I am being my true authentic self. I am going to be there for them. I'm going to support them. I'm going to love on them. I'm going to help them. And what comes of that and how that relationship develops individually and then also as a whole, that's the culture itself. Like, I don't have to consciously cultivate that. Like, it will unconsciously do it for us. And the people that want to be a part of that culture will be attracted to it and they will come, you know? So in my head, I'm like, yeah, it comes when you have like this situation with this client and then you communicate that. Like, yes, it does happen like that when Sally never listens and you call them out and you say, hey, like, you're disrupting my class, you know? But it really happens when you show up for them every day. You're just there for them. You pat them on the back when they're having a down day. You add a little bit of weight because you've been super impressed with their performance lately and they trust you, right? Just moments like that, or just even giving them encouragement because they kept their knees out on their squat. Like, I know so many coaches, even in this town, that don't give positive feedback after they give coaching. Like, even that in its littlest form sends a cultural message, right?
Yeah, it's amazing how if people know at least the mission, the values, the beliefs, how it does filter through all of the communication, all of the interactions, all of the coaching experiences, and all of those ways in which you're trying to help people improve their life. And it's through the lens of the culture that you are creating. And it gets people excited. They want to be a part of it. They want to be a part of something meaningful. And that helps them to achieve some of the goals and intentions that they're most interested in. And I know that coaching the group fitness is something that's really meaningful, and you've done it and you've really executed at a high level. You're also really passionate about the one-on-one coaching with some of the culture health stuff. So I'd be curious to know, what does that look like when you have somebody who's interested and they want to do some one-on-one work with you? Is it more of an established, curriculum, educational path? Is it more organic in the one-on-ones you have with them? But what does that look like when you start working with people one-on-one?
Yeah. So the gym really is a funnel to the one-on-one program, but the one-on-one online program is also a much broader reach. Like, I can work with anyone in any country, in any state, and that's awesome. But everyone's got something different that they're working on. And so the very first thing that we do, the only thing that's structured, is a goal setting session on well-formed goals. And a couple times people will be like, you just asked me that question. And I'm like, nope, it's different. And the words are so important in the questions that I ask to get them to these well-formed goals. And what that does is sort of set up the program for us. It's like, okay, well, this is what you want. This is where you're at. This is where you want to go. These are the things you need to make this happen. And then we just task that out. So it's required that they work with me for 3 months. So I do a 12-week program. And if they'd like to continue, they're more than welcome to work month to month. But the lowest tier is they get workouts, they get check-ins weekly, they get tasks. So they can go on their app and just be like, yep, we said we would do this every day. We said we would do this every other day. We said we do this 3 times a day, and they can say whether they did it or not. They get macros if they need them. And the largest part is the habit change stuff. So if they're really struggling to make it happen, like using the bare minimum tools to help them make that happen. And then if we're really facing some stuff, if we're facing limiting beliefs, if we're facing childhood trauma, it shows up, maybe these fitness and nutrition patterns are showing up in finances or career or relationships or self, then we take that to the next level. So base level, they just, pretty simple, also quite affordable. And then the next level is if you want to bust through some of those massive things, maybe even your relationship with being, losing weight, like the person that does lose weight, because that's also like losing weight can be a mental block. And that mindset stuff, all of the, like the online quantum time therapy stuff that we do, that's a whole nother level. So they can upsell into sort of the things that require my help rather than the things that I'm assisting them with help with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. There might be some people who feel pretty strong and secure in some of the things they're working on and maybe need just a little encouragement or guidance or some education on the best path to get them there. And then there might be those people, like you said, who like, hey, I've been struggling with this for years and I haven't cracked the code yet. I really need to dive in deep with somebody. So there's different levels and tiers to the type of folks that you can help and interact with, which is really, really cool. And it sounds like there's been a lot of success for folks who've had an opportunity to work with you.
Yeah.
One of the things that we always love asking guests on the show is we've got this framework with Greater Culture where purpose leads to these principles, leads to practices, where if I have a pretty good sense of my why and what drives me and motivates me and my purpose, that's going to lead to some of those different beliefs, some of those different values, maybe even like a mission statement. And it eventually trickles down into what are the practices that you use on a day-to-day basis. I'm curious, over the last decade, you've had so many different experiences and so many unique opportunities to learn and grow and develop. Are there certain principles that you would say kind of guide or influence the way that you operate now, having all of those different experiences under your belt?
Good question. I do. Let me organize them in my head.
It's like the biggest question that I usually say for the end. And I feel bad sometimes because I'm like, man, I just like dropped a really big question on somebody. And,
first one would be set high standards and continually find solutions until you meet those standards and then set new ones. Yeah. I have to like turn this area in my brain off when I visit other gyms because I just have different standards. You really do have to continually chase new standards. So it is the same thing as like a goal, that I think that is probably the first principle that I live off of is there is always the solution to make things better. If the floor is dirty, there's a solution. If the floor is dirty because so-and-so never does it, there's a solution for that. If the floor is dirty because you don't have the right vacuum or the right tools, there's a solution for that. If the floor is dirty because nobody thinks it's important, there's a solution for that. There's nothing you can tell me that happens in the business world or in the personal world that doesn't have a solution. So that's probably the first thing in setting high standards. And then the second thing would be like everything is everything. So the way we do one thing is the way we do all things. And everything is important. So the way I'm going to use the floor analogy again. The way we clean the floor, how diligent we are, how detailed we are about cleaning the floor says how detailed we are about how much we care about our members, right? If we procrastinate in this area of our life, we also procrastinate in this area of our life. If we binge food, we probably binge spend money. We probably binge watch TV, right? We probably have these behaviors in other areas of our life. So if we set up really successful behaviors in our business or in our career or in our personal life, it will bleed into other areas of our life. So everything is everything. Another example is like I worked at this gym once and the dumbbell rack was just like falling apart. And I brought it to a meeting and I said, this dumbbell rack is falling apart and it just doesn't even look good, let alone its functionality, right? And the two people in the meeting with me said, it's not that important. It doesn't make us money. And I was like, oh, I just can't stand that response. Like, it is important. What if it was a safety hazard? Like, it doesn't look nice. Are you valuing their memberships? Like, what does it say about you if you just leave something that's broken? Like, are you just leaving things inside of you that are broken? Are you working on yourself at all? So everything is everything. And the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. And that would be probably the second principle that I live off of. But there's many more. Feel free to comment.
Yeah, I would say those two principles, it's funny how it culminates so many of the things you've highlighted over our conversation today. The idea of having a standard and then upholding and living up to that standard, and then applying that standard to all different areas of your life, and how that has impacted you with mindset, with your coaching, with your competitive career, now opening a gym, of understanding that, hey, we have to have standards. And if we're not meeting or exceeding those standards, then we're probably doing something wrong. And if we meet them, then let's just keep moving it up. Let's keep advancing and growing and developing, because we know that we're going to find creative solutions every time we come up against something that might be a little bit of a struggle. So it makes a lot of sense with all of the experience and all of those opportunities you've had over all the years to now culminate with this newest opportunity with Culture Fitness. And so I know I'm really excited to see where you're able to take the space. And I'm grateful that you spent some time sharing your experiences, sharing your thoughts and your ideas around mindset and quality of life, and how we help other people, and how you're doing that in Bentonville, Arkansas. So thanks so much for taking some time to spend with me today on the Greater Culture Podcast.
Thank you. This was a pleasure. Anytime. I will hop on a phone call with you and talk about mindset anytime you want.
I appreciate that. It is a topic that I could probably talk about all day. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me.